Um, Today we're moving forward on important legislation focused on pregnancy crisis centers to make sure that women get the right information about the services and support that they need when they're making important life choices. We're always going to be there as a government, as a party, to stand up for women's rights, for women's reproductive rights, and push back against anyone who's trying to take those rights away.
Mr. Speaker, my daughter is in the gallery today, so I want her to hear me as long as everyone else does. This government is unequivocally pro-choice. We will always defend a woman's right to choose. Full stop.
Internal polling for the Liberals must be worse than we know because they've trotted out their favorite wedge issue. Trudeau's extremist Liberal government is pushing legislation to revoke charitable status from groups that don't toe the Liberal line on abortion and birth control. Now, if you disagree with this attack on real charities helping vulnerable women, please visit SaveWomen'sCharities.com and sign the petition. The radical Trudeau change in legislation is being framed as a measure to protect reproductive freedom. But in reality, it's an attempt to shut down pro-life voices under the guise of regulating charity status. The proposed legislation, announced Tuesday by the Department of Finance through changes to the Income Tax Act, demands that registered charities disclose whether they offer abortion services or birth control, and punishes those that don't explicitly state as such by potentially revoking their status, regardless of the very real charity they do on a daily basis. Charities that fail to comply will be labeled as deceiving the public and face the possibility of losing their tax exemptions and ability to issue donation receipts. This means less support for organizations that offer services ranging from pregnancy counseling to life-affirming care for vulnerable women, what the Trudeau government labels abuse in the announcement of the changes to the law. So let's clarify what this really means. On one side of the street, you can counsel a woman that she is incapable of carrying her child to term, offer her an abortion, and still be considered a charity. On the other side of the street, if you tell a woman she is fully capable of having that baby and offer her support, counseling, diapers, and other help, you can lose your charitable status if you don't follow Trudeau's new labeling rules. Let's simplify it even further. If you give out diapers at the food bank, that's charitable. But if you do it at a pro-life organization, that could be considered uncharitable under Trudeau's regime. These pro-life charities do the work for the people the government says it should help, the women and the poor. And the Liberals say they care about choice, but is it a choice if they won't let women hear about options other than abortion? The Trudeau Liberals say this is about truth in advertising, that crisis pregnancy centers are dishonest, and not at all pregnancy centers unless they counsel for an end to the pregnancy rather than just the pregnancy. The Liberals are worried that a woman contemplating abortion might wander into a crisis pregnancy center by accident, learn some facts, get offered some help, and then choose life. Now, if you want real truth in advertising, maybe the Liberals should stop calling abortion reproductive freedom and transitioning kids gender-affirming care. And let's talk about the double standard here. As pro-life group Right Now points out, are the Liberals going to require the radical environmentalist David Suzuki Foundation to explain to the public that it is anti-oil, at least in theory, but not in practice? Or are these new charity rules only for pro-life groups? This is all very similar to Justin Trudeau's anti-conversion therapy law, which banned voluntary religious counseling for those struggling with sexual identity issues. That law means in Canada, there is still, of course, conversion therapy, but it's where doctors and activists convert gay kids into trans ones. Well, it's all the same here. There will be pregnancy counseling services, just counseling services to end the pregnancy, not to keep it. It's a clear attempt to strong-arm organizations into supporting a pro-abortion agenda, even if it contradicts their foundational principles and conscience rights. And of course, it's a shameless, cynical move for a failing Trudeau government to make one last Hail Mary attempt at a social wedge issue. If I'm even allowed to use that phrase, Hail Mary might be just a little too pro-life for these ghouls. If passed, the legislation will essentially gag pro-life charities by forcing them to undermine their missions just to keep their status. But the charities, they're not standing for it. Look at this. Stripping pro-life charities of their charitable status jeopardizes the very existence of these crucial organizations. They would be forced to close, leaving the women and babies they serve without the support they need, said Jeff Gunnarsson, national president of Campaign Life Coalition. Speaking to the proposed legislation, the vast majority of pro-life pregnancy centers already disclose that they don't commit or refer for abortions. With this proposed legislation, the Liberal Party is once again reaffirming that it is not the party of choice, but the party of abortion as the only choice, said Gunnarsson. Now, Justice Minister Arif Irani and the Department of Finance claim that these measures are necessary to prevent what they call the misuse of charitable status by groups that allegedly mislead women. It's the bigotry of low expectations, assuming pregnant women are just too darn stupid to figure out what these charities do. And this rationale seems less about public accountability and more about penalizing those who hold different beliefs on a deeply personal and moral issue. Women and Gender Equality Minister Marcy Ian, who I bet $100 can't even define what a woman is, had this to say in the House of Commons.
Our government is committed to ensuring every woman has the right to make informed decisions about her body. Therefore, pursuant to Standing Order 83-1, I would like to table in both official languages a notice of ways and means motion which contains our plan to require more transparency from charities who use deceptive tactics to push women away from making their own reproductive decisions. Pursuant to Standing Order 83-2, I would ask that an order of the day be designated for the consideration of this Ways and Means motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
These changes set a dangerous precedent for freedom of speech and religion in Canada, and you should care about that even if you aren't pro-life. With charities now under the threat of losing status for not aligning with the government's pro-abortion stance, what other conservative causes could be on the chopping block next? Maybe civil liberties charities that fight for your right to protest or speak your mind? The message is clear. Play by Trudeau's rules or face the consequences. Pro-life groups already operating on limited budgets now face a battle for their very existence against a government intent on enforcing its ideological agenda through legal means. Now, if this bill becomes law, it will come into force 90 days after royal assent, applying to charities starting in 2025. This gives pro-life organizations a very narrow window to challenge the legislation, raise awareness, and rally public support for what they see as a gross overreach of federal power. So time is short. We have to act fast. Sign the petition at SaveWomen'sCharities.com, calling on the government to reverse course and quit targeting these charities which help vulnerable women choose a different way. We'll make sure the petition lands on the desk of the Justice Minister, the Finance Minister, and Women's Minister Marcy Ian. These weirdos need to quit attacking people who help the poor and the frightened for grimy political reasons. It's gross. The Trudeau government may frame all of this as supporting a women's right to choose. What it really is a chilling crackdown on the rights of pro-life Canadians. A movement, ironically enough for the Liberals, that is overwhelmingly young, ethnically diverse, and female. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. The government is attempting to strip pro-life organizations of their charitable status, simply for disagreeing with the government's official line on what the government calls reproductive health. Pro-life organizations are first on the chopping block, but who's next? That's why you should care. Sign our petition at SaveWomen'sCharities.com.